Hello, everyone. Welcome. So glad to have you here with us today. I'm really excited today to more formally introduce you to my dear sister priestess friend and radical forgiveness master coach, Lorree Appleby. We're going to be talking about next level ascension tools today and the power of forgiveness. So welcome, Lorree. Thank you so much for joining me here today for our conversation.
Thank you, Dawn, for having me. Great.
And yeah, it's great. I'm glad to be able to be doing this and kind of interviewing you because we get to talk all the time. We talk every week, and of course I've worked with you. You've helped me a lot with radical forgiveness, forgiving myself, forgiving others, and I know firsthand the power of your work. So it's exciting for me to get to share your gifts and share you with a bigger audience. So I wanted to begin by just letting you kind of riff on your background. How did you come to radical forgiveness? What is it? Yeah, just start with that. Like, what was your journey to becoming a radical forgiveness master coach? And then tell us a little about what radical forgiveness is.
Great. Yes, I'd love to. So when I look back on my life, when you look back, you can start to see how the dots connect. I really see that and how I was led to do this work. It was very divinely guided. Even the things that I thought was just really hard times in my life, now I can see, how it was all bringing me towards this work. So starting out, just when I was young, I had a lot of body issues, shaming, and didn't feel safe in my body. Didn't feel really safe to express myself just based on my upbringing, and so I really became shut down, didn't share how I feel, didn't share who I was, and really started to be that people pleaser because I really just did not feel safe if anybody didn't like me, didn't had a problem with me. It was very threatening. So there, whatever that was, it was very strong for me. And so I grew really good at getting to people to like me. And in that journey, I really started to not like myself. And I think that's because I was so much wanting to make sure everyone was okay. And that's how I received that love and acceptance, was through everyone else around me. So, being in service-based industry, I became a mom at not too young, but, early 20s. My family was extremely important to me and I wanted to do it differently. Not that my mom did her best and my father wasn't there, but I just knew that I really wanted to do life differently than what I had. But in doing that, I sacrificed myself. And so there's a lot of judgments, a lot of blame, a lot of resentment that grew over time. And sacrificing myself for my children, for my family, for my husband, for my friends, it really started to wear down on me. And I became very resentful, very angry, but I never felt safe to express all of that. So it started to come out in body issues. I had a lot of emotions that were so built up inside of me and started to not be well and really just hate life. I had so much to be grateful for. And so having that, just the pressure was getting bigger and bigger and heavier and heavier. And I didn't know what to do. I just kept thinking if everyone else would change, I'd be fine. It was just all out onto the world and onto other people. And, a few big things happened, which I won't get into, but, some relationships with family members that were codependent, that broke down. And that really, in that big breakdown, it forced me to make some changes and to set some boundaries, which I really didn't have any healthy boundaries. And in that, and just working, I started to, in the job I was in, I really didn't like it. And I just went into, okay, I'm going to work for myself. And that was huge. And so I decided to do that. And then I got led to a business coach, and then who she is, Odette. And then she was doing a lot of personal development, and just one thing led to the next. And she introduced me to the book, Radical Forgiveness. And just, starting to read that book and start to look at the concepts and really see like the soul's journey, and it's like, oh, we're not just here to, you know, work and pay taxes and die. Like, there's more to life, you know. It just felt so dismal and I couldn't see any way out. But when I started to see that this was actually my soul's journey, came here to have these experiences, and that there was another way to look at it, and there was some freedom to be had, I very divinely got led to taking the radical forgiveness training. And you know, I really had to step into that courage of, I'm doing something really big and I don't know anybody, and I'm going to fly to Atlanta and do this. And on day two, I felt so much love, and I've never felt in my entire life. And I
Wow.
really feel it was that love connection with God, with source, and with all the other individuals who were there doing the same thing. And I'm actually getting emotional just talking about it, because I think I'm going back to that time.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, just going through that experience, I just knew this is what I meant to do, because I obviously, we always have to do it for ourselves first. So I had a lot of forgiveness to do, first on others, especially that one person in my family, and then, you know, then doing it for myself. And it just really changed how I thought, my thinking, the way I thought about everything. I started to realize that my judgments were a reflection of my own perception, my own filters. I didn't understand any of those things before.
Mm.
And so just going through all of that and having such, you know, it's not like my life was terrible, but it felt terrible inside. It felt
Mhm.
really awful inside. And I wanted to be a good role model for my children. I wanted to be, um, just be happy and have peace. Like, those were the biggest important things. And I didn't feel those things.
Yeah.
Um, you know, this work has just completely changed me 360. And in saying that, I used to be terrified, like literally, that's maybe not even the strongest word, of speaking,
Mm.
of putting
Wow.
myself out, just standing in the middle in front of a room. I remember when I went to my first conference and I had to introduce, my heart was like pounding out of my chest. And
Wow.
now I am able to do those things. So I was so trapped inside, and doing this work has really allowed me to feel good and be okay, that I can just be me, and I can and I can be who I truly am, which I had to discover, and of course I'm still discovering. So,
Wow.
you
What a
know, it's
story.
done so much. Yeah. Yeah, it's done
Yeah.
so much for me.
And this is great. Thank you so much for sharing this. There's a few things I want to say before we dive into more about radical forgiveness. One is that I find, you know, your story, I think a lot of women will certainly relate to, and probably men too, of, you know, the being almost a martyr, like putting everyone else first. And certainly women were taught that, you know, like you put your kids first, you put everyone else first, blah, blah, blah. And the buildup of the resentments that happen. And which is funny because I come a little bit from the opposite end, and yet we've both found deep transformation, because I was a rebel. I was the opposite. I was not about to, you know, yeah, I put my kid first in a lot of ways, and those ideologies were still in there, but I was more a rebel against the dominant paradigm. However, I ended up in the same energetic, and I feel like a lot of people relate to this. It's like my life had many good things. It wasn't perfect. We're not living in a perfect world, but I was suffering because of my mind. And that, I think, is the thing that radical forgiveness helps us to get at. We go to the source of the problem instead of saying, as you said so beautifully, well, if everyone else would change, I'd be fine. You know, and like that old idea is so silly in a way, but it's what we're taught, right? And once we make that shift and then begin to do the work of the actual forgiveness, everything opens up in a whole new way. So I wanted to ask you to tell us a little bit about radical forgiveness. Like, yeah, what can you tell us? Because I know you've got, like, there are processes, there are things you do, and I know you can't get into all that, but if there's a way you can kind of, for the person listening who's like, well, you know, what do you mean radical forgiveness? Like, give us a little insight about that.
Well, the biggest reason why I love radical forgiveness is because it helps you understand why you have the judgments, why you have the feelings that you have. It helps you to become, I like to say, the detective, like to look for the clues, to notice the subtleties that are going on, and becoming more self-aware. That's what I love about radical forgiveness, because let's face it, we all have an ego, and you start out with your egos very strong, and it's on autopilot, it's in control. And when you can sit and say, oh yeah, I want to forgive, and it's all love and light, but that's just bypassing what's truly going on. So with radical forgiveness, it helps you to look at what that story, that victim story, that time you were abused or betrayed or abandoned, because we have all have those stories, those experiences that seem very real to us. And if we don't go back, just not to go and relive it, but to clean it up in a way. So witnessing and validating that, oftentimes that has happened when we were so young that we never actually got to be heard, to let it out. So the energy is stuck and it's become very dense in our bodies. So in order to move that energy out, we have to start to break that energy up. So radical forgiveness actually starts to break up that density, because those traumas that have happened, and we're not psychotherapists or anything like that, but trauma can be something very just being neglected by parents that were they gave you everything you needed, but they weren't able to be there for you emotionally. That can be a trauma.
Yeah.
Traumas don't have to be the severe abuse that we think traumas are, that they are, but trauma can happen in so many ways. So when we start to witness and validate the story, actually tap into what are those feelings, because oftentimes we've shut down our feelings. That was me. I shut it all down. I processed everything up here, and all the feelings were just getting stuck in my body. And then, aches and pains and disease starts to manifest over time. So radical forgiveness actually helps you to break the energy up, interrupt that pattern of that I'm a victim, that I have to suffer, that, I'm not lovable, or I'm not good enough, or whatever the story is that's running. So it helps you to start to collapse those stories. And in doing that, the energy starts to loosen a little bit. So then when you actually start to do the work, it starts to move and release out of your body. So I like to talk in terms of energy, because I feel like everyone can understand and relate to that.
Yeah.
And really, you can't get there until you start to look at, what are my patterns? What is the feeling pattern that I'm constantly having? What are the belief systems that I have that aren't true, but we believe they're true because they're embedded in our cells, in our DNA, and they get passed down through generations.
Yeah. Yes. So this is, sorry.
Go ahead. No, please. Yeah.
Because one of the things that's coming up for me is this thought that, like, there are people that we know, and we know many people who have had terrible experiences of trauma victimization. Let's say someone's been raped or repetitively, abused, let's say, by a parent or a sibling or something growing up. And they're carrying that, and now they're 40, 50, 30, 40, 50, 60 years old. And that's still in there. You talked about breaking up the energy. So I wanted to ask you to make a distinction for those people who are like, yeah, but Lorree, my so-and-so did abuse me for a decade.
Yeah.
How am I supposed, how is this going to help that? And so I know there's a lot you could say here, but I'm wondering if you could speak into that directly, because I feel like this is super important that we honor that people have experienced deep trauma and victimization, and it is not a lifetime prescription of suffering. So talk a little about the process of how one deals with that.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I want to say that everybody's different, and what I'm going to share, it's going to be case by case, because it really depends on the person and how deeply they, took that in, and how much they're absorbing those judgments that it's the other person's fault or it's their fault. But what radical forgiveness does is it gives us the opportunity to take a look at what happened from a different perspective. But before we can do that, like I said, we really have to witness and validate what happened, and really go there. So we don't jump to the forgiveness. We actually, that happened. That was terrible. I felt, I felt betrayed, abused, violated, all the things, and be with that. And most likely, not most likely, definitely, they're going to have a lot of feelings are going to have to be felt and released. And
Mm-hmm.
so, depending on the person, I might not even, if someone was that severely traumatized, I would probably want them to work with a psychotherapist and in tandem with radical forgiveness, because, there's some deeper work to do. And so when I work with someone and it's that deep, I sometimes I will refer them to someone else, and they'll work with them as well as me. But you got to feel the grief and feel it. And we often resist feeling that because we don't want to go back and relive it.
Yeah.
But we can do it from creating a safe space, being supported by people who are loving and there to hold the space, and that have that capability to be there for us while we release those feelings, while we, just really go back to that time when it happened, just in order to honor that child or the teen or whatever we were at that time. And yeah, it did happen. We don't ever deny that. And a
Mm,
person also has to be ready to let that story go, but you
mm,
cannot let it go until you have closure, right? So
mhm.
going back and witnessing and validating and feeling it is that closure piece. And like
Mm.
I said, with grief is going to come up, and grief is, everyone does it in their own time. So I can't give a time frame on it. I'm not saying you asked, but just for anyone that's thinking, I can't give a time frame on it, but often just going back and revisiting it just in order to say I'm revisiting, I'm honoring, and I experienced that, and I'm letting it go now because I know that there's something better, there's something more, there's peace, there's happiness that I want and I deserve. And this is working on that deep shame, that deep guilt, and it does take time, it
Mm.
really does. So it's an honoring, it's a putting that person, whoever that person is, that you're in control, you are in charge, you get to say when you're ready, not anyone else. Because I find sometimes there's modalities that, like, you got to move to the next level. When I felt empowered, that it was time, I got to say when I was ready to move on, and
Uh-huh.
I got to take it step by step in my own time, and I didn't have to force it or push it. Then I was able to release and stop resisting going there.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of things that have to be in place, but the safety, the the allowance of the grief, the allowance of the feelings, and there's different feeling processes. Sometimes there's an emotional release process that really has to happen to get
Mm.
all that energy to start moving. And those are things that I do with clients, or I refer out if I feel that it's something that a professional psychotherapist needs to
Mm.
help with.
So, okay, so this is great. This is important that that's why I wanted to bring it up, that you speak into this. So basically, creating the safe container, allowing people to go back to revisit whatever it is they're needing to forgive, from that place of the safety to express, to feel the feels that maybe
Yeah,
were not felt fully, and be
yeah,
witnessed in that. And
yeah,
then go, when they're ready, to go through the process of radical forgiveness, which is a reframing completely of the story, so that we don't go to our grave telling the victim story.
yeah,
We
yeah. And going
transform it.
Yeah, and going back and like when I work with a client, like, it's, you're actually not, the person's not there, but you're actually, the work that we do, you're confronting, you're saying how you truly felt at the time that you may never have been able to give voice to.
Mhm.
Just doing that is very healing in itself,
Yeah.
you know, and then the feelings automatically start coming. But then we go to the next level where we start to, once that victim story that did happen, that was experienced, has been witnessed and validated, and the feelings have been felt, then you start to look at, okay, what truly happened? What were the facts? And what were the interpretations that I made up about it? So the
Ah,
facts were, yes, I was violated, I was abused, whatever. But the interpretation is, I'm worthless, I'm unlovable, and that's not true. That's what we made up about it. That's what and if someone tells you you're worthless and unlovable over and over, you're going to start believing it. So that's where we start to look at the patterns and the belief systems and separate them. And then doing that separation of, this is the data that happened, this is the facts, but this is all the interpretations I made up about it that created that density that I was talking about. That's when the energy starts to release and collapse, right?
that's
But
the
we can't get
collapsing.
there.
Yeah,
Yes, but you can't get there until you do those beginning
right.
steps. And that's what I love about radical forgiveness is Colin Tipping, the late Colin Tipping who created this, he saw that people were not ready to jump to the happy ending of it's all meant for a reason and meant to be. He knew that people needed to go through these steps. And it just really came in, downloaded to him of how to do it.
Yeah. Now, speaking of Colin, I know that when he was diagnosed with a terminal illness, and you were one of his students, it was
Yeah.
you he turned to help him process. So he was one of your clients, therefore,
In a
which is
way.
quite amazing and quite beautiful. And so I was wondering if you have any other either story with him or another client of yours, like give us an example of something you've seen happen for clients in going through this journey, getting to the other side, the results they see.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I'll just say, like with Colin and with anybody, we're all human. And when we are having the experience, we're in it. And it's hard to see the bigger picture when you're in it. So with Colin, it was just a little joke that he was talking about it. And the woman that was with him, my radical forgiveness coach, Essence, I said to him, hey, he seems so good. Like I text her, is he really doing good? And he was still in the room. And he said, oh, does she not think I felt my feelings? Would you want to have a crack at it, Lorree? Like, do you want to, let's do it. Let's have a session. So we had a session and I should have been nervous, but I wasn't. And I just felt, okay, this is happening for a bigger reason than I know. So I'm just going to go for it. And it was so beautiful that I was able to help him see some things that he hadn't considered. And this is the stuff he does, but it just goes to show you that we're all human. Even the creator and the founder and the teacher, they're still human and they're going through their experience and we all do. So having that someone else to look and see what you're not maybe seeing and listen to the words you use, the phrases you use, you can start to pick up on the clues and the patterns. And that all starts to help to collapse the story and uncover the root of what's going on. Because that is what radical forgiveness is, getting to the root of the matter, of what's really going on at the deeper level. Because it's not, the surface level is just, the pain and the judgments that we see and the unhappiness. But at the root is there's a purpose, there's a reason. Right. So
Yeah.
Colin was able to see the root of what was going on. And it was so beautiful how he shared so openly his journey and his, he had a celebration of life when he was still alive and, all these beautiful things that he did that he really was able to and get to the point where he said cancer showed him, because he died of cancer, or, that was what happened. And he said, cancer showed me how to be able to receive love deeper than I've ever been able to receive. Because he's from Britain, stiff upper lip. That's the mentality. And yeah, he was able to, had to receive, right? And so that was the deeper reason he realized that this was what the gift was. but he had to go through, like I said, go through all of the stages before he could
Yeah.
get to that bigger, deeper wisdom.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what radical forgiveness does, but it takes us through step by step, because if you're not, you can't get to that deeper wisdom unless you've gone through the process. And
Right.
you don't have to believe the process. You can be skeptical of the process. It still works because your
Right.
intention is that, okay, I'm willing to be open to the idea that there's another way of looking at this, that there might be a bigger reason, another reason that I cannot just not see in my consciousness at this time. Like,
Yeah,
yeah.
thank you for bringing up the willingness. And that's, of course, an intersection with A Course in Miracles. We don't
Yeah.
have to understand it. We just have to be willing. And in fact, one of my funny stories is there was a point where I knew that forgiveness, this was before I knew about radical forgiveness or A Course in Miracles, but I was listening to a lot of Esther Hicks, Abraham
Yep.
Hicks stuff.
Yep.
And I knew I needed to forgive my ex-husband, but I was holding a lot of anger still toward him. So I started sticking Post-its around the room that said, I am willing to forgive my ex-husband, and then, with his name, I'm willing to forgive him. So that little willingness can go a long way, even if we don't understand the method or even believe that it can work.
And
Yeah.
that's, oh, sorry, go ahead.
Well, I was just gonna I wanted to segue to the value of this at this time on the
Yeah.
planet, which I wanted to ask you to speak into too. And I just wanted to say, this piece of like, when we really start to get it, that our minds and our consciousness are the magnetizer of everything in our life, then we start to realize, like, I do want to collapse the victim stories. I do want to collapse the frequencies that keep magnetizing the wrong job, the wrong relationship, the whatever, the health conditions that are not serving me, the annoying whatever, the breaking down cars. When we realize that and we recognize that, wow, my frequency is at cause here, it's at the root here. Even if we go, well, but I was victimized for 10 years as a child or whatever, I don't see how that could change it. Even if we don't understand that, this process works. And that's the amazing thing that I've experienced. And so many of us who have done radical forgiveness and A Course in Miracles forgiveness practice have come to discover, is that we change ourselves and that thereby we change our lives. So is there anything that you wanted to say about, why is forgiveness important now, particularly? And yeah, anything at all about that? Like, why now? Why is this relevant now?
Well, the times are changing, we know that it's been going on for a while, but really kicked in 3 years ago. And it's, things are becoming more pressurized in a way.
Mhm.
We were all having to stay in our homes, and we started to see, wow, do I really want to be with this person? Do I really want to do this job? Do I really want to live in this place? Like, we started to really examine what we had time, right? And we were really kind of forced to just sit with it. And it's really easy to go out and do all the things and distract yourself from, am I happy with my life? Is this what I want? Do I feel like I'm having a meaningful life? Do I want to keep repeating my patterns over and over again? Or do I want something different? And the more light that's coming in, and we know there's so much light coming in from all the solar flares, from, just the disclosure that's happening. People are starting to see, wow, things are different. This isn't what I thought it was. It's just opening up our awareness to so much more. And it's not easy for the mind. The mind, can really go, like, get very spin out. So forgiveness is really like A Course in Miracles. I feel it's kind of like a mind training program, because it helps you to think differently. It helps you to become more aware of your thought patterns, because your thought patterns are what is creating what is going on in your life. And so, yes, if you had a terrible childhood, but you're still thinking in that way because you have those beliefs about yourself and about the world and about whatever it was that happened, you're going to keep recreating it. So the only way you can stop creating it, we can't, like, what's the phrase? You can't control the hand you were dealt with, but you can control how you play the cards.
Yeah.
So that's when you start to change the way you're thinking and tune into how you're feeling and be open to different perspectives, which is what radical forgiveness does and what forgiveness in general does, the true forgiveness. Not that, I'm going to because I'm going to be the better person and forgive you, not that kind of forgiveness. But when you can start to do that, it changes everything. And no matter what happens in the world, no matter what goes on in your family and in your life, you have a tool, you have a new way to look at everything. So you can run it through the process, and then you can become and go through your feelings and collapse the story and then come back to the peace and let it go. And as we keep letting all this distortion and all the things that are coming up, all these things coming out of the shadows, the things that were very hidden in our unconscious and in the unconscious of the world, is all starting to bubble up. If we don't have things to forgiveness, if we're not able to forgive it, we are going to judge it. We are going to be afraid of it. We are going to resist it. We're going to feel like it's our fault. And all of that is going to just pull you right back down into that lower frequency. And so, not saying that lower frequency is bad or wrong, it's just a part of our evolution. But I would say anyone that's on this call, we are all, in this process of raising our vibration. We're in this ascension energy, and we need to have tools and processes to be able to let go of these thought patterns that we have that automatically come up and are constantly being out in the collective, because we're being affected by everyone else's as well.
Yeah. So imagine, this is what I always think. Imagine if we 10x'd the number of people who raise their frequency by forgiving and releasing and transforming. We're emanating into the collective field and then thereby supporting a timeline that is an ascension timeline, rather than staying locked into the old dominator model of victor victimized that our world is and has been for, 5,000, 6,000 years, maybe more.
And we start to realize that we actually are the creators of our reality. And I don't mean like going back to that person that we were talking about, that they created it. I'm not saying like that, we come in to have experiences so that we can move through the evolution of it. But we get to a point where we start to raise our vibration, that we realize that we have choice and we are strong enough to make a different choice. So like you said, in doing this work, we are also doing it, I like to look of it, for people that are in the lower vibration that don't have enough life force energy to make a new choice. Right? So I'm not just doing this for myself, I'm doing it for everybody. But of course, for myself, right? We have to do it for ourselves first. And then we can connect to everyone. Right?
Yeah, this is a wonderful point of the sacred service of forgiveness for all of life. And of course, we start with our own spiritual liberation, our own freedom from the baggage of the suffering from the old victim stories, or whatever they are, the anger stories, the judgment stories, the resentments. But then by doing that, it's that idea, the rising tide lifts all ships. By our rise, we serve all of life, which is a great segue into what I meant to say at the beginning, and will certainly share now, that for those of you who have stayed with us this far, thank you for being with us. And I want you to know that Lorree and I have teamed up to offer a beautiful healing retreat coming up at the end of August called Freedom Through Forgiveness. And our Freedom Through Forgiveness course brings in Lorree's very skillful, nuanced, compassionate, patient hand with radical forgiveness, and my sort of overarching principles and guidance and forgiveness practice of A Course in Miracles as taught by Jesus through that channeled text, to bring our gifts together that we may take a group journey in a safe container to liberate ourselves individually and for the collective of any of the old baggage we're carrying around. So we do already have people joining the course. It doesn't start until the end of August. But I would love for you, if you are finding value in this, if you feel resonance with Lorree and or myself, have a look at returnofthepriestess.com/freedom to find out more about this course, because this really is for those who have specific someone they want to forgive, as well as really everybody. Because if we are here in this 3D earth right now, we are still living in a consciousness in separation, and we were raised by adults and culture that have instilled in us beliefs, constructs, ideologies that need to be loved up into a higher frequency, and that need to be transformed, transmuted, felt and released. And that is what this retreat is about. So if you have any area of your life that you feel you would like to raise up in frequency, maybe career, relationship, health, lifestyle, old patterns of consciousness, like you wake up every morning and you're stressed out, or you're struggling with your finances, or you find yourself, you're you short circuit too easily, or have a short fuse. All of this and more will be up leveled by taking this journey with us. And even if the timing doesn't work for you, everything is recorded, so you have access, lifetime access to this beautiful journey we're going to take. So have a look at returnofthepriestess.com/freedom and see also this very special pricing that makes this available to anyone and everyone, no matter what your current financial situation is. You'll find a price point that works for you, literally, quite literally. So with that, I also wanted to turn it back around to you for a moment, Lorree, and ask you to let people know how they can find you directly, as well as through our upcoming retreat.
Yes, definitely. So you can find me on my website, ourpurposefuljourney.com, ourpurposefuljourney.com. And then also my YouTube channel, Lorree Appleby, and you can see my name on the screen. It's just spelled like that. So those are two places that you can find me. And then I'm also on social media, but yeah, I'm really excited for this course.
Yeah, I am too. And the link, so everyone knows, all those links will be in the description box, so you can click through there. And Lorree, I want to thank you. I want to thank you personally, because you have helped me personally to do some very important forgiveness work with a key person in my life, and my own self as well. And I want to thank you for this interview and for your sacred work in the world.
Thank you, Dawn, and thank you for asking me to do this, because I truly, really do feel this is the time to do this. And I love that we've made this price structure as well, because we don't want anyone to not feel that it's not for them because of a barrier of finance. So really, anyone who's ready, it's here for you, and we're here to serve. So let's do it together.
Yes, thank you. We're here to serve. Let's do it together. Go ahead and check out the link so that you can find out more. Join us for the course. We would love to take this journey with you. Again, thank you, Lorree. Thank you, everyone who's been here with us. Many blessings, and we hope to see you at the end of this month for Freedom Through Forgiveness. Bye for now.